How's it going, everybody? Jody in here, and we're back in Stormworks. And I recreated my save file, so no more sirens. Those can just take a hike. I actually did disable disasters last time, but I forgot that I also created a second disaster setting. I took their disaster file, copied it, and then changed the timers so that the timers can actually go out to like 4 hours real time instead of their limit of I think it's 60 minutes. So you have a disaster every hour. So I stretched it out. So I turned off the default disasters, but I forgot to turn off the the extended disasters that I had implemented. So I had to recreate my save, and I was like, oh, that's why I'm still getting disasters. But anyways, glad to know it works because I wasn't getting disasters like, or I should say, I was getting disasters every, I think it was 30 minutes or whatever the default was. So I was like, okay, well, I know that works. But anyways, this is going to be a quick video. We're getting back into the radio stuff. I showed you kind of a half-finished radio system last episode, and I have done more work to it. It still looks fairly the same, um, but it is much more complex now, and it actually works. The the system that I wanted to finish actually works. You'll notice I got rid of the GPS stations. I got rid of the calculators. I got rid of the GPS displays on the side here because we got that nailed. That system works. You'll also note that I put an extra antenna on the tower. That extra antenna is there for actual communication. So I'm going to be putting my two radio systems together. The radio system that I built before that I showed you, the one that scans the frequencies and pauses, and I'm going to be putting that system with this system. So I'm going to actually be able to listen in to the conversations basically as I'm scanning the frequencies. I could just there's and then I can hit pause and I can listen in. So I'm going to put my two systems together. I'm not doing that in this demo right here. I'm going to do that once I get back to the island that I was working on that I showed you in the first video. The one that I tried to bring in, and it was like, oh, it doesn't fit the build area because, it's an island. So I'm going to be taking all of this and incorporating that into that island. I'm also going to be making I'm going to be breaking this down, making it somewhat more, not necessarily compact, but I'm gonna break it down and make it more presentable, and then I'll put it on the workshop for anybody who wants to use it. But right now, I just want to kind of take you in and show you the changes that I made. We're going to start by showing you the code changes that I made. Now you're going to notice right off the bat that I have a channel viewer here. And this is basically so I can click on this thing and I can go through and I can see, okay, these are all the channels that I am outputting because I have, I thought to myself, I'm like, I'm doing all these math calculations, I'm doing all this work in this microcontroller, which is no longer a microcontroller. It's now a major controller. It's freaking big. So I'm doing all these calculations in this controller, and I was just throwing them away. So then I thought, you know what? All these calculations that I'm doing could actually be useful. For example, I can relay bearing. I could relay bearing and distance to a weapon system. I could relay the map data to a second screen or a screen somewhere else. I could send it out on an antenna. I could broadcast it to another location. So like I could have, a general map. I could have the radio room, and then I could have a map room. So I could actually have the map in the radio room, a smaller one, and then I can have a big map room, somewhere else. So I got to thinking, all of this data, all these calculations that I'm making, it's a shame to have them confined um, to this microcontroller. So what I did was, instead of outputting the frequency, just outputting the frequency, I had that one little dot. Remember that I was sending the frequency out to the antennas? I don't do that anymore. Now what I do is I take all the data that this thing actually calculates and I send it out on a single composite point right here. So you can see raw data output, and in the tooltip you see raw data output frequency channel 2 or channel 20. And the reason I put that there is because the frequency is the actual thing that I need to get out of there for the whole system to work. So I put frequency channel 20, and then up here I just have a little microcontroller that I made which reads composite, outputs a number. That's all it does. It just reads the composite, outputs the number. You even have to go into it manually and tell it that, you know, what channel you want it to look on. So I have it looking on channel 20. So basically that's all that's doing. It's taking channel. It's replacing the dot down here that only output the frequency. So now I have a dot down here outputting everything, and I'm just taking stripping the frequency and sending that to the towers like I was before. So this in addition to this is now basically the system. But anyways, I don't want to go into that. I want to actually look back here. So everything that was here before is still here, and this is a monster of a frickin' system. So we get the let's go through it because this might take a little bit. And I don't want it to take a little bit because right now, unbeknownst to you, I don't know where you are or what time it is where you are, but right now as I'm recording this, it is the middle of the night. I have to work in the morning. I woke up to, I'm guessing a noise. There was something that startled me awake, and when I woke up, I couldn't get back to sleep. So I was like, oh shit, you know what? I might as well just get up, do something, and then try to go back to sleep. So that's what I'm doing. I'm up in the middle of the night, just doing something. I decided to be a little productive, so that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing this video. So I figured, you know what, I might as well take a half hour or something, do this video, and then I might be ready to sleep again. So, but I do work in the morning, so I can't make this video like 3 hours long. So it's got to be like short. So let's get to it. Anyway, I'm burning time. Okay, so we have the north tower signal, we have the tower GPS Y, we have the tower GPS X, south tower signal, west tower signal, east tower signal. We're also getting the tower power source. You can see it's connected to the battery. We're getting the highest frequency number from the keyboard. We're getting the lowest frequency number from the keyboard, both right here. We're also getting the zoom from here. We're also getting the secondary north antenna signal, which, as you recall, is for checking the what size of antenna the target has. That's what we're using, the two antennas. We're comparing this huge antenna to this large antenna because we know the range of a huge antenna, we know the range of a large antenna. We're comparing that to the detected range from, we're comparing that to the signal, I should say, from that tower over there, this tower over here, these two towers here, that tower there, and we're using a calculation to figure out exactly what towers we're talking to. And I covered all this in the last video, so let's get to the nitty-gritty of what this video is about. And like I said, here's all the outputs. Now selecting one does nothing. I put this here specifically so you could just click on here and go, shit, what channel was that I needed to strip? Oh, I need the tower GPS X and Y, so I need to look at channel 7 and 8. That's the whole reason I put that there, just as a reference. It doesn't do a damn thing. In fact, I'm gonna show you it doesn't do a thing when I go into it here. So let's open the microcontroller. Here's the microcontroller. This is all the inputs, all of our inputs on this side, and then we put it through the Lewis script that calculates the radio signal, the bearing distance, all that stuff. And then we have the map making Lua, and then we have our composite out. And here is the channel viewer. You can see it's attached to nothing. It doesn't do a damn thing. It has no attachment point whatsoever. All I did this for was to take all these frequencies that we have and output them to a place where you could easily see them, so you don't have to go through and go, oh shit, what channel was that? What channel was that? I can't. Oh, it's not even here because we're outputting it through the script, so I don't even know what channel that is. So we have to go into the script to find the channel. No, 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 none of that. It's right here. Every channel that's output by this thing, every channel that's used by this thing, it's all right here, and you can see it through the tooltip because I did a drop down menu and set them up. So I figured I'd make things easy that way. So this is our first Lewis script. And one thing I discovered with these Lewis scripts was if you don't pass numbers, they do not transfer, apparently. Unless they do when I did something wrong. So if I'm bringing in all these numbers into this Lewis script, but I'm not sending them out of the Lewis script, they stop right here. They dead end right here. Do not go any further. So if I don't output these, like the GPS coordinates and the tower signal strength and all that, if I don't send these through from this point to this point, they do not end up over here, and they do not end up over here. So what I have to do is I have to take all these inputs and I have to grab them in this script. Then I have to export them so this box can use them. But I also have to grab them all here and send them all out here. So this will have it. So you're going to see that in the script. And I decided, since I had to do that, that I was just instead of the way I was doing it before, where I was only grabbing information when I needed it. Now I'm at the point of, okay, I need this information whether I use it or not. I need it because I have to send it out at the end. So now I'm just doing it all in one block. So this is all my inputs right here in one block, and then when I scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see all my outputs in one block. So I grab it all in one block, I send it out all in one block, and everything's happy. This is still just putting data to the screen. That's all we're doing in the calculation function here, is putting data to the screen. This has nothing to do with the map drawing itself. So this is all data gathering, data processing, finding out the distance, finding out the direction, finding out what antenna they're using, and we already went through all this basically. So this is the one that I didn't have completed. As I believe I left the last video where I could see the ring. All you could see was a ring, the range of the object, but it didn't have a direction drawn, and it didn't have a point drawn. So I'll go into this script here, and you're going to see I got a whole bunch of stuff here. And once again, I'm on my function on tick. This is where all the inputs and outputs have to happen, is in the on tick. So in my on tick, I'm grabbing all the information. I'm sending all the information. And you notice there's more information being sent out than there is being received. Because down in this draw section, down in the function on draw, I'm actually doing some more calculations that I want to choose to send out. So for example, width, height, angle, x1, x2, which is our target, as far as our target on a screen. So all of that stuff isn't being pulled in. We're stopped at target bearing. This is the stuff here that we are sending out that we pulled in. This is the new stuff we're sending out. So you don't just pass through what you already have. You also pass through what you've done. So I felt this might be useful if I wanted to send information to a screen that was not attached to this. So if I wanted to, all I would have to do is basically broadcast the what's it called? Composite. All I'd have to do is take the composite signal out from here, send it out via an antenna, receive it at another location, and I can use all that information at that new location to draw the map, all that stuff. So I don't even need to have, because I've done this, I don't even need to have my maps anywhere near my antenna, because I can broadcast all of that data from one location to another. So I could have a map room on a ship offshore receiving all the data from this base station. So the ship that's offshore can have its own function. I could copy this, put it on the ship offshore. Like, I don't have to have all these inputs connected because I already have all the information. So I could put this ship offshore, have it calculate with this block right here its own map based on where it's located, and it can view the target information from the tower centered on it. So say let's just use this as an example. Say this is an island, okay, and I have the radio tower here, okay, and then we have a boat, and a boat's over here, okay. Our radio tower is going to be getting all the information, wirelessly transmitting it to the boat, and then the boat's going to have its own little map function like this guy. So it's going to take that composite data that we're transmitting from the tower. It'll take that composite data, draw its own map, so it'll have a map centered on it. So its map will be like here, but it'll be able to see any pings that come from this tower. It'll be able to see in its area, if it's in its area. So that right there makes it worth outputting all of this data, because this data here is crucial. I have the GPS location of the tower, so I can do an offset, because then all I need to do is rerun a really quick calculation to say, okay, this is the GPS of the tower, this is the GPS of where we are, do a correction to center at our location instead of at the tower's location. It would be a very, very simple calculation to do. But anyways, yeah, I'm sidetracking again. So let's get back into this script. So as you can see, I have a whole bunch of variables here. I have the new ones are zoom, old zoom, because I want to keep track of what the old zoom was. I want to know what the current zoom is and be able to set the current zoom, but I also want to know what the previous zoom was, because I want to check to see if the zoom has changed. Because if the zoom, if the player has not changed the screen by moving their zoom, I don't have to refresh everything. I can leave stuff on the screen until, you know, the next process. But if they move, like I say, if they change the zoom angle, then I have to redraw all of my data points, because all of my data points aren't gonna size with the zoom. They will size with the current zoom, but as soon as you move the zoom, if any of my data points are still on the screen, they're going to stay where they are. So you're going to have inaccurate data on the screen. So I either have to clear the screen, which is what I chose to do, or I have to completely redo all of the scans instantly when I change the zoom, which is a pain in the ass to do, and I wasn't even going to do that. But as long as you don't move the zoom, you can see here that I have 6 variables, X and Y, and it actually works out on screen. It actually works out to 5 variables. I don't know why one of the variables is getting lost or not drawn, or drawn a second time. I'm not exactly sure why, but anyways, I wanted to show 5 dots on the screen, or the last 5 targets on the screen, so I needed actually 6 X and Y variables to do that. Then we get into our on tick, and like I said, the on tick, the only reason that we do an on tick is to grab the information and output the information. Some of the information is used to process the display, some of it's not. But I wanted to send it all through, so I needed to grab it all and then send it all. Alright, so moving to our on draw, which is the main what do you want to call it, the bulk of this Lewis script. And I'm absolutely loving this, by the way. I did not know Lewis script when I started doing this. When I started messing with these radio things, I knew nothing about Lewis script. And then I started looking online. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That kind of relates. And then I started putting things together. Oh, that's kind of like the programming languages I know. So which I know a little bit of Java, and I know a lot of Turing, which anybody who knows the Turing language is like, okay, well that language is kind of it's a machine language. It's it's got its limits, um, but it's amazing for machinery. It's amazing for machinery, but it's got extreme limits when it comes to things like making games and stuff like that. So uh, you don't hear many people knowing about the Turing language, but that was what I learned in school was Turing, and then I took it from school, and I did make some games with it. They were basically text based adventure games. Didn't sell them or anything. I just made them for shits and giggles. A couple of my friends might still have them. I don't know. I don't know. Probably not though. But anyway, so I'm really getting into this Lewis script, and as you can see, I'm an absolute nut when it comes to documenting shit. So I love documenting my scripts. In fact, I get a little too much into it. I write novels, and I really shouldn't. I should just put key points. This is what we're doing here, instead of being like, oh, now we're doing this, because of that, because of this, and now we're doing this because of that. Getting the whole story in because I'm using up so I'm using up so many characters. But anyways, I do the same thing right now as I'm videoing this and I'm talking my ass off. But anyway, so function on draw. The first thing we got to do when we're doing a draw function, we got to get the screen size. So we're getting the screen width and the screen height. That's basic. That's you do it on draw. You have to get the screen width and screen height because otherwise you're not going to have any idea of what you're doing, where you're placing a line, where you're placing a dot, where you're placing, you know, anything. So where your text lines are, you have no clue. So you have to know what the screen width and screen height is. And then while I got the screen width and screen height, I always calculate out. I create a couple of variables. This time I called them mid W and mid H. So mid W and mid H, of course, are the center of the screen. It's half the width and half the height. So that these are my two these are my two numbers that give me the center of the screen. So this is the center of the width. This is the center of the height. Put them together, you got the center of the screen. Now I got a count. I created a count for this because I have to have a count, and you'll see why later because a count is reminiscent of time. There's 60 ticks to 1 second, approximately 60 ticks in 1 second. So every tick is basically a millisecond because 60 milliseconds is a second, and I think anyway, that's the way it should be. 60 milliseconds should be a second, 60 seconds is a minute, 60 minutes is an hour, and then for some reason 12 hours is a day. It should be 60 hours, but no, I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that suck? 60 hours in a day? Oh my god, that'd be brutal. But anyways, so we're going to use this counter as basically a timer. Uh, in this case, so we want to keep track of time. So we have a counter. Now, our distance, we have to calculate something that's going to be a little cleaner to a screen. And I don't know why this calculation works. I honestly don't. I don't know why it's divided by 1,000. And I don't know if that changes with displays. I've only tried the one display so far, so I haven't troubleshooted with different displays. I haven't gotten into the nitty gritty of what the hell display are they using, because this might change. I might have to create an if statement to say if they're using this screen, if they're using that screen, if they're using another screen, or just base it on the width and the height, because it does work seemingly perfectly with the screen that I'm using right now. So that gives me this number here. So all I would need to do is width, height, and that, and then figure out the width and height for any other screen that I'm going to be using. So, but what this does here is it calculates out it calculates out the distance on the screen based on the real world distance divided by 1,000. I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works, but it works. Okay. So now we get to actually doing stuff on the screen. we now know about the screen. We've done a basic calculation to figure out, the distance that this is going to be on the screen. So now we can actually do some drawing. So I set the color as black. I draw a clear, which clears the screen to whatever color you've set. So I'm clearing, making a black screen. Now I'm drawing a map. I'm going to draw the world map based on the GPS X of the tower, GPS Y of the tower, and the zoom setting. So the zoom setting is now crucial to drawing the actual map. And that's where we get that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set a different color. This is like I think it's like a kind of a purplish. I actually need to correct that because I was going to use a pink dot, but I found pink was a really bad color. It blended into the screen basically. So I decided to go with a purple, and then I draw a circle. I use the draw circle. I'm only drawing a circle 3 pixels in size, so it's basically a dot. So I use the draw circle function to draw a dot in the middle of the screen, and that represents our tower because the screen is going to be centered on our tower. So I wanted to give some kind of reference on the map because the map, like I showed last video, the map really doesn't have much detail to it. It basically has the landmass, and you can kind of see some features, but not really. It doesn't have buildings drawn on it. It doesn't have anything like that drawn on it. So it's really important that we know where the tower is so we can then get a visual representation of how far away these dots are from us. So I decided to pick a color, which was purple. It's fairly easy to see on the screen. And then I draw basically a dot where the tower should be in the center of the map. So now, what we do now is check for a signal, because we need a signal in order to process a point on the map for our target dot. We actually have to have a target. So if there's no signal, we're not going to process our target because we don't have a target to process. So I'm going to check for the signal. Once we have the signal, then what I'm going to do is calculate X and Y. And this is kind of an interesting function in Lua, the map to screen function, because what this does is actually it allows me to get X and Y at the same time. And I get X and Y from the map to screen function using the map X and map Y plus the zoom. It takes the zoom into account, takes the screen size, the width and the height, takes the GPS coordinates into account as well. And then what happens is I get X and Y coordinates on the screen in relation to the map. So it basically brings the map and the screen together and says, hey, here's the coordinates. And this is where the coordinates are going to be on the screen, not just on the map, or not just on the I got that backwards, sorry. This is where the X and Y is going to be on the map. This is where it's XY is going to be on the map in relation to the screen. So this is where all that magic happens. All the zoom magic, all of that stuff happens here. The ability to stay on target while zooming in and out, while having the one display which has a fixed width and height, translating that into the map, which I can zoom in and zoom out. So when I zoom in and zoom out, the screen size, the virtual screen size, changes. So for example, if I'm looking at the map at full view, we'll call it 1. We'll say full zoom is 1, or not full zoom. We'll say normal view is 1. So if I want to zoom in, like another, say 50% of the maximum zoom. So we'll say that'll be 2. So say I want to zoom from 1 to 2. All of my point calculations now have to be processed to take that into account. So the zoom is zoomed in, which means all the dots on the map get farther away. So if I'm just processing the screen shape, all those dots are going to stay on the screen in the same spot. They're not going to zoom with the map. They're not going to move out, you know? Because if I'm looking at this, say I'm looking at, this X and Y right here. Say I'm looking at this X and Y on my screen here. If I were to zoom in on the X and Y, the X would actually move this way, the Y would actually move that way, and they would get bigger as they're going out. So I need to, when I zoom, I need it to calculate that out. And this is exactly how that happens, because it takes into account the zoom. It gives me my X and Y off the map based on my zoom. So that's where the magic happens, right there. If anybody wants to know how to do a zoom, there it is. If you or a map that will the data on the map will follow the zoom. There you go. Okay, so screen distance. We're going to recalculate the screen distance now because we're going to take the zoom into account now. So screen distance is our distance calculation, which we had up here, this one here, divided by zoom. So we're taking the zoom into account now. For our screen distance, we're taking the zoom into account now. We're dividing that by the screen get width. And then down here, we're going to process the angle. So now that we know the distance, we know the range as it's going to appear on our screen, now we're going to process the direction. And we do that right here. So our angle is going to be the target bearing that we calculated, math pi, and then we have to divide that by 180. Because if we don't divide it by 180, it points in the wrong direction. So we have to divide it by 180 to bring it down. Because math pi, of course, is 360, so we need to bring it down. Anyway, now we're going to calculate the actual point. We have all of this information now. We have the angle to the target, we have the distance to the target in relation to the screen. We have the angle, we have the distance. Now all we need to do is find out where that lands on our screen. So in order to figure out where it lands on our screen, we take x1, which is our x-axis, and we take y1, which is our y-axis. We're going to create those variables, and we're going to create them from the middle of the screen. Okay, we're going to take the middle of the screen plus the screen distance. This is our range, and then we're going to do a cos. Negative 1.58 is actually a correction to make north the top. If you do not do this, if you do not put this negative 1.58, what will happen is your north, as far as the screen is concerned, your north is going to be east. I believe it was east. So what you have to do is you have to put this negative 1.58 to bring north to the top, and then plus your angle that you just calculated. So what this is going to do, what this is doing is it's taking the distance from the middle of the screen. It's taking the distance from the middle of the screen, and then it's figuring out the angle from your x-axis angle. So we know the range, and we know the direction, and that's basically all you need to make a point. You need range and direction. And then on the y side, we have the same thing, middle height plus the screen distance, and then we go math, and this time we do a sin because we're getting a different, we're doing y, we're not doing x now. So we're doing height, not width. So now we do the sin, same thing, negative 1.58, because we need north to be north, plus our angle. And that gives us our x and y of our target in relation to our screen. So now we have the X and Y center of the screen, taking zoom into account, and we have the X and Y of our target, which again takes the zoom into account. So we have the X and we have X and Y of the center of the screen, which takes zoom into account, and then we have the X and Y of our target, which also takes the zoom into account. So there you go. That's how you calculate out where the target's going to be, regardless of your zoom setting. And to be honest, the only reason I put a zoom setting on was because I didn't want to make I wanted to be able to zoom in, zoom out, because sometimes if you're zoomed out too far, it gives you great detail on distance targets. But if targets are right up to you, it's all going to be one just little blur of color right at the center of the map, and that's completely useless. So, and I'll show you that in a second here. So finally, now that we know where the target is, we're going to, just for shits and giggles, we're going to set a light gray. We're going to draw our circle. This is the circle that shows the range. And we're going to draw a line to the edge of that circle. So it's going to kind of be like a ping. It's going to be a circle with a line, and the line's going to point in the direction of the target. And it's going to kind of be a ping. Now, since we found a target, I want to reset our count, because I only want to do this counting. I only want to do the timer counting when we don't find something, because I don't want the data getting old. So if there's new data, I don't want it to continue counting. So I reset the counter with new data, and then I get into a bit of a memory storage. This is my memory storage. And basically what it does is it checks to see if x1, which is our current data, is equal to x2, which is our last data, the last data we got. So if the, and this is actually a knot. This is how they draw a knot symbol. So if x1 is not equal to x2, so in other words, if our new data is not equal to our old data, then we're gonna store this new data, and we're gonna truncate our old data. So what happens is x2 and y2 become x1 and y1. Like that's where they get stored. So y1 becomes y2, x1 becomes x2, and I think I just actually figured out why I needed 6 to get 5, because I am calculating x1 and y1 right here, and I am instantly shifting it into second spot. So I have 2 dots that are going to be identical at all times. That's why I'm losing my 5th dot. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But I had to do that because I can't calculate it. I can't do this if I haven't already calculated that. So I'm kind of stuck in that loop, and that's why I had to do the 6th variable. Makes sense. I'm good with it. It's fine. So what basically happens is we have placeholders. So like I said, so the most recent signal becomes the old signal. The old signal becomes the older signal. The older signal becomes the even older signal, and so on and so forth all the way up to the top until we hit the end. And then, you know, whatever happens to the oldest signal, when all this truncates, this oldest signal that's in here, x6 and y6, gone, vanishes, gone. We don't care about it anymore. We have our 5 data points, well, 6, but we have our 5 data points for drawing the map. That's all I want, is the last 5. The rest can just be gone. So I'm not worried about storing it. So, and we only store this data, we only do this shift if we detect a signal. So we detected a signal. I'm going to check to see if it's the same signal that we had previously detected, because if it's the previous signal, I don't want to re-record it. I don't want to fill all these up with the same signal. So if it's not the same signal, we're going to record it. But if it is the same signal, we're just going to ignore it. We already have that data. We're just gonna hold on to it and continue on our merry way. So now this is where the timer comes into effect right here. So what I'm doing here is, if the count is 1800, which is 30 seconds, or the zoom is not equal to the old zoom, so the player has changed zooms. So if it's been 30 seconds or the player changes zooms, what happens is all the data gets wiped. All the position data gets wiped. The screen gets cleared, and we start gathering over again. And the reason I do that is because I have to draw the points down here. And drawing the points down here, if I were to zoom in, zoom out, whatever, these already take into account the current zoom that I'm using when these were processed. I can't recalculate the zoom on something that's already been processed. So in order for me to have accurate dots on the screen, I have to be at a zoom that's stable. So if the zoom changes, then I wipe the data, old zoom equals zoom, and we go through the loop again just to see if that changes again. So if they change the zoom again, it's not going to equal the old zoom, and then we go through this whole thing again of clearing the data. Or if the data has been sitting on the screen for 30 seconds, because we don't want old data on the screen. So if the data's been on the screen for 30 seconds and we haven't found a signal, wipe it. It's old data. It doesn't exist anymore. Plus, 30 seconds, a target has moved. So if a radio signal comes in, we know where that target is right now. In 30 seconds, that information is going to be outdated. So, because we're probably going to be picking up moving targets, not stationary targets. We're not going to be picking up bases. We're going to be picking up boats, planes, vehicles, signals from moving targets, or even handheld walkie-talkies. The handheld walkie-talkies will be picked up by this too, because those are on a frequency and they send on a frequency. So we're going to pick up things that are in motion or capable of moving. So after 30 seconds, we don't want that data on the screen anymore. If we haven't detected a new signal, we don't want that data still on the screen, because it is now old and outdated. Odds are that target has moved on. It's not there anymore. So after 30 seconds, or if they change zooms, wipe the data. And then down here, we have our drawings. So all it does is it sets a color, and then it draws a point. It says draw a circle, but it's basically drawing a dot, because the circle's only three in size, 3 pixels in size. So it's or radius, I should say, of 3 pixels. So it's a really small dot. But anyways, so I set the color and then draw a dot. And as you can see, I start down here with the X1, Y1, which is the most recent. Or I should say I start with the least recent, because I want the most recent to, if the most recent and the least recent are on top of each other, I want the most recent one to show through. So I start purposely drawing from the least recent, but the colors go the other way. So this one, you can see I'm using red, because the first numbers is red, green, blue, and then transparency. So on the first one, I have almost full red. 255 would be full, so almost full red, and absolutely full transparency. I want it to be solid dot. I don't want to be faded or anything like that. I want it to be solid red dot. That's our most recent target. And then from there, you can see the red fades a bit, and the transparency fades. And then going down, same thing. The red gets a little less red, little more white, because, well, not white, but you know what I mean. It gets a darker shade of red, actually, because zero is actually an absence of color. So 0 would be, what's an absence of color? So as we're going down the numbers here, it's actually getting to a darker circle, but we're fading it out, so it's actually, the color's getting darker, but the fade is letting through the background white, so it's actually getting lighter. it's kind of backwards, but you'll see it when I show it. So, and then we keep going down, and our very last one here is there's only 80 red, which is less than a third of red, or of full red, I should say, and we're down to a transparency of 50. From 255, we're down to a transparency of 50, which is almost see-through, like almost completely see-through. So the reason I do that is because I want a very distinct appearance difference between newest signal and oldest signal, and I want you to be able to see that gradient as the signals age. So that's why I did that in that method. So anyway, let's get to it here, because I can't get these videos short. I can't. And then we output that to a screen, of course. So let's get to it. I'm going to show you the system. So take you back out here and spawn it in. So here we are. Again. Here we are again. So our tower's got to shift. Our tower's got to shift to north. You can see it shifting. Like I said, this antenna here is not in use yet because it's going to be the actual radio antenna to listen and talk. That's what it's for. It's not going to be it's not part of the detection grid at all. And I still have the GPS module in the middle there, which thankfully works. If you have something on top of it, it still works. So the tower still knows where it is, even though I have the GPS module buried. I also enclosed the tower now, so you can't see the compass anymore or anything in the inside. It's all closed in now. This tower can be as tall as the build area, really. You just basically extend this section of it up through simple, cut and move, then fill in. Very easy to change the height of the tower. Does not affect the calculations at all. Oh, and here's our map. You can see that, like I said, the pink dots in the middle. So I can zoom out, zoom in. The pink dot will stay in the middle of the map. And accurately display where our tower is. And I can show you how accurate it is, because we're gonna run a frequency scan of all the antennas here. Well, except for we're only gonna scan one of the antennas on the car, because it's pointless to put two dots in the same place. So we're gonna run a scan, and it's gonna point all of these targets exactly where they are in relation to this tower. Our tower is now aligned. Okay, so we'll get this going. So I'm going to go to 130 because our last tower we want to scan is actually 125. So I'll just go to 130 just for a buffer. And we'll come over the map. And you'll see them start to appear. There's 1. There's 2. 3. 4. And the car. 5. And then those are the only frequencies it's going to find, so it's just going to keep. And you can see how they're fading out. See how the old ones are fading out. So our tower, we're facing north. North is, you can see north is that way. So from a north angle, we've got our tower here, and then we go out to the back one, which is that one. We have from the back one through the tower to the front one, which is that guy. And then we have this one here, which is the truck. And then past the truck, we have that one there, which is right there. And that one there, which is right there. So that shows on the map, we have displayed our targets. And like I said, if I zoom out, so this is as far out, and you can see what's going to happen now. You're going to see all the dots bury each other, and you might notice the red up in the corner here. That's their default position is 0, 0 until they actually get a signal. So it will draw them on that corner until it gets a signal. But you can see zoomed out, there's no, there's no, there's nothing to find there. In fact, it's completely blotted out our. We can't even really see our tower because we're zoomed so far out. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. If you have distant targets, like if you have a target that's out, 4,000 meters or 4 kilometers, you got a target that's out there, you're going to want to zoom the map out. But if you have targets that are close by, you want to zoom in. Because zooming in, the farther you zoom in, the more detail you have as to where they're located. So you want your zoom to kind of match your targets. Which I could have happen automatically. I could have it auto zoom. But I'd rather have the manual control on it. But I could have it auto zoom. What I would do is take the furthest target. I would base the zoom off the furthest target. So I would go furthest target plus about maybe 10%. So yeah, I would take the furthest target. So say the furthest target is 100, and then I would take 10% of that, which of course is 10, and then I would make my range or my zoom. I would calculate my zoom to be 110 based on that. So it would actually zoom out to a point where that target is just a little bit in from the edge, and it would just zoom based on that. But that would number one, it would be hard to scale because I kind of want to add something else here, which is this zoom. I want to, with this zoom feature, calculate, because the zoom goes from 1 to 5, or is it 1 to 5 or is it 0 to 5? It might be 0.1 to 5. You can set the zoom to whatever you want, but what I want to do is, based on the zoom, I want to actually put a scale down here. So like, like maybe one block is 100 meters here. Out here it's 1,000. Out here it's 10,000. Whatever the actual scale works out to be. But I want to have the scale bar on the corner of the map, just like you would on a regular map, to show this is the scale, and then the number under it would be like 1 block equals a meter, 10 meters, or 20 meters, 30 meters, whatever it actually works on based on the zoom. So that way, when you are zoomed in something like this, and you have your target over there, you can look at that and you can go, oh, okay, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, three of the bars. So that's 30 meters away, because it's three of the bars, and the bar is 10 meters. So if I can work that in, just to put the range down here, I don't think that would be a very hard thing to do. I actually think that would probably be a very easy thing to do. But I haven't done it. The thought just actually came to me. So I do want to have a distance bar down here, so it's not just a bunch of dots on the screen. It's actually a functional display where you can go, oh, okay, so that's really, really close. So this is going to be 30 meters here. On this screen, this is 30 meters, and then when you zoom in, on this screen, this is 30 meters. So I do want to work that in, and this is basically what I'm talking about right here. This kind of bar on the bottom corner of the screen here, and then basically what it'll tell you what 1 block or what one of these is worth. So like this is 10 meters or 20 meters or 30 meters, depending on what the zoom is, from this edge to this edge, or the whole bar itself. I'll say the whole bar is 30 meters, or the whole bar is 20 meters, or whatever, based on the zoom. So working that out, I think, would be pretty easy. But I'm not going to do that right now because, like I said, it's the middle of the night. I do need to get back to bed because I do work in the morning. And I am starting to feel tired again, so that's good. That's good. I think it's time. But anyways, so I just wanted to show that off. I wanted to show off the tower and the functioning map. Um, so now all I have to do is put this into a basically put it into a room, put it into use, and I'm going to use it, like I said, um, on my base, which needs a lot of work. But I haven't shown you my base yet. I'll do that very, very quickly right now. Assuming I can locate the island. Assuming I can locate the island in a relatively short period of time. So I'm gonna resave this because I don't know if I made any changes or not while we were messing around. But it is working. I know it's working right now, so I'm gonna resave it just to be safe. Okay, now gonna go to the map, and you see how this map has more detail to it. I wish this map was the map that it actually uses, because you can see hills on this map. There's some hills here, hills here, hills here. You can see the building on this map. The building is drawn. So I actually wish the map that it used was this map instead of being some dumbed down version of it that only shows the white and the green and the light blue. That's all it shows. It doesn't show any of these lines or any of these formations. It doesn't show any of them. It just shows the background colors basically. Um, so I feel without those details, the map is kind of broken. But anyways, let's see if we can find the island I need. That is not it. It's the custom island with the large boat. Uh, no. It is the custom island with the large boat. You are not. You are the Coast Guard. No. Custom island, large boat. No. No. Uh, nope, you're the oil derrick. I do have a base for the oil derrick. Or a platform, I should say. What are you? Are you it? I think this is it. I think this one's it. Oh, wait a minute. Location. It doesn't actually say what the name of it is. I think this is it. Please be the right one. Is this the right one? This is the right one. Okay, so this island I started making a base for. And it's nothing major right now because like I just started throwing things together. Um, so I haven't put in, you know, the touches yet to make it stand out as something extraordinary or whatnot. I basically just put in basic structures, did a little bit of plumbing. But let me load that in here. So this is that. So this is the island. I painstakingly shaped this ground, this floor. I painstakingly shaped this to actually match the hills, so there wouldn't be too much excess structure actually underground, not being used. Um, and I also need to make a big change here because I have what is going on with that? That's weird. It won't let me draw on it. It won't let me put anything on it. That's weird. Why won't it let me place anything? I'm in build mode, right? I can't do anything. Am I locked or something? Oh, wait a minute. Wait, what? Hold on. No, it's got nothing to merge to. That's weird. Why won't it let me add anything to this? That is so weird. It won't let me build anything onto this. Can I spawn it? Okay, so I can spawn it, but I can't edit it. That's so weird. That is so weird. Oh, so this was my original radio demo here. This is from somebody else. I just needed it to figure out how to do a scan feature. So I just took a quick look at their radio controller, but it didn't actually help me at all. I had to do basically all of this by myself. But anyways, so this one you can enter the frequencies, and this is what I was doing from the start, just to testing to see if I can actually pick up a signal. So over here at the keypad, I set this to like frequency 20, okay, and then over here, I set this to scan from 0 to 40, say. And it is not working. Why is it not working? Close frequency. Oh, because I think this was back when I didn't have that connected. I'm pretty sure this is back to when I didn't have that connected. So let me hop on here, and I'm gonna actually update this to make sure it's got the right radio on it. Okay. Update. Yep. Okay, and I need a small display because I need to be able to check my data. So we'll put a small display upright. We're gonna hook a power to it. Power to that. Yeah, this was back when I was screwing up and didn't have things hooked up. Video display, connect up to there. Electric's all hooked up. Composite don't need. And here, I need. Do I have a constant on? I don't have a constant on. I have that hooked up now. That hooked up now. That hooked up. That's what I didn't have hooked up right there. I don't have my frequency. Because I have my frequency hooked up to the tower, but I had forgot to hook up the frequency to the actual digital display down here. So there. That was the connection I had forgot to make. That Mondo helped me with. He was like, "You realize you didn't connect anything to that?" And I was like, "Oh fuck," because I couldn't figure out. I was like throwing my code around in like Reddit forums and all that. Then I threw my code at the Stormworks Discord, and I was like, "Somebody please tell me what I'm doing wrong here." And there was actually nothing wrong with my code. I just didn't hook the damn thing up. So it was pretty friggin' funny. Anyway, but I'm glad I did because I ended up talking to Mondo for quite some time, and we worked on the generator thing and just screwed around with it, and that was a lot of fun, and yeah, so had a good experience out of my stupidity. I don't actually need this anymore, so let's get rid of this. Oh, and I also learned some tricks. Like, did you know if you're on selection grid, did you know you can do control and boom, selected, boom, selected, boom, selected. Did you know you can do that? And then once you have it selected, you can switch to shift, and you can actually start clicking other stuff to expand that. So I can click on here, expand that out. I can, if I want to click on, oh, look at it. Now I grab the keyboard. Now I grab this. Now I grab that. Now I grab that. Now I grab that. And it constantly continues to enlarge based on the stuff you're clicking on. And then if you want to shrink it back down again, you just hold control and you just single click again. And you start grabbing by the piece. Is that not cool? That adds a whole new level to. I mean, I knew about grabbing colors. I knew like I can, if I was like this, I could hold control and I can grab a part, or I can hold shift and or not shift. See down here, control the eyedrop, so I can eyedrop the components, and that eyedrops the color, it eyedrops the component itself. So if I want, say hey, I want this red square, there you go. If I want, I want that button, I want that, copy that button, I want to copy this block. They hold down control and you can make that happen. So I knew about that, but I didn't know you could do that shortcuts with the selection grid, which I should know because they're all right here. All the damn shortcuts are right here. I just don't read the friggin' things. So it's my own damn fault. But anyways, this is what started me on the whole radio thing here. Oh, and have you noticed I'm able to place blocks again? I just had to spawn the damn thing in. Weird. Anyway, so I'll show you the radio demonstration. I didn't get to show you before because I wasn't at this location. So here you go. So this is what I had before. I was stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I could see what stage the scanner was at, and that would tell me. And I had a frequency output here too. And that's exactly how we figured out that I had screwed up. Was the frequency here was going up, but this number wasn't going up. So I was like, oh, okay. So he was. that's when he hit on the whole. Did you hook that? Did you actually hook that display up? And I had not. So we're gonna set this to 20 again. We're gonna set this to 40. We're gonna have it scanning the frequency. You can see all the stages are at 1 now, which means we're running. Program's running, and it's actually displaying down here because I'm not being an idiot this time. So that antenna is actually that one right there. And then you see, when I trigger this, when it hits 20, if I have this thing transmitting, when that hits 20, it's going to stop. It's going to pause. Bam. I'm locked on to 20 because there's a signal on 20. I'm sending a signal, and if I was listening in right now, I'd be able to hear, what's coming from the microphone, and I'd be able to listen to the conversation. The second you let go, it goes back to scanning. But if I'm locked on to frequency 20, now I'm not going to be able to do this because I can't hold down 2 buttons at once. Or can I? I can! What? So I can be holding E on that, and I can press this with Q. That is so useful. Anyway, so now if I let go, you see it stays on frequency 20 because now I've locked in that frequency. It's not transmitting anymore, but I'm locked in on that frequency. I'm like, oh, somebody was on that frequency. I'm going to listen in and see if they say anything. I'm going to stay locked to the frequency. And then, after 5 minutes or so of them not saying anything, I'm like, fuck it, I'm bored. Let's continue on. And it'll continue scanning. And then, we have a signal again. Locked in. Rescue. There we go. Now we're locked to that signal. That's not transmitting anymore, but we're still locked to that signal. We still have a signal. And then I can drop it. Just like that. So this is what I was working on before. I was just working on a simple radio scanner. And then Mondo was like, wow, you can use this to scan, active frequencies, and then you can do this and do that and do something else. And I was like, huh. Yeah, I could, couldn't I? And that's what kind of got my brain going into, well, if I'm finding a frequency, I would like to know where that person is. So now I can plot, maybe I could plot it to a map. And that's when my brain started the whole rigmarole of, how would this work? How would I get it output to a display? And how would I make that display then show the location of the target? Not only the location, but the distance, the range, all that stuff. And my head just kind of spun with it. And that's basically, like I said, I was inspired by the old radio antennas that they used back in the, way back. We're talking World War, I believe World War II. I don't think radio was World War I. Maybe? But you see these old pictures of radio tower, and they look a lot like, not necessarily like I've done, but you'll see towers that are placed in fours with one in the center. So like if you look at a five-sided dice, or the five side of a dice, they're placed like that. How they're, you know, four in a box and then one in the center. And they use that one in the center. They actually use that one in the center as their main antenna, and then they use the offset four to calculate. Um, but they could only calculate distance. They couldn't calculate range. Whereas in Stormworks, because I have known numbers, so I know how powerful, each antenna is in Stormworks, and I can figure out which antenna they're using. So I have more capabilities in Stormworks than you would have in the real world. In the real world, you can't really tell distance to target. You could tell direction of target if you have an array, but you can't really tell distance, um, unless you have a very large grid and you can do a what's called a circle grid, which is basically how cell phone targeting works. Because you'll have a cell tower to your east, you'll have a cell tower to your west, you'll have a cell tower to your north. Those towers know their range, so they can, you draw a circle on those towers, you draw a ranged circle around those towers, and where those towers intersect, that's where your target is. So I shouldn't say where they intersect. I should say where they intersect at a certain power level, at a certain power level. So they'll check your signal strength, and they'll know how far away you are from the tower based on your signal strength, and then they can say, okay, well, he's at this location because this tower picks him up at this strength, this tower picks him up at this strength, and you just draw circles from the towers and you got him pinpointed. Whereas the way that I'm doing it, I'm relying on an array of towers in one location that I know of, like the location I'm at is known, and I'm using the signal strength at those towers to basically calculate the distance away, how far somebody is away from the tower and what direction they're in. But anyway, so this was the simple radio that I was working on. This was my very first Lewis script. I didn't write it. I haven't really written any Lewis scripts other than this. Or I should say I haven't written Lewis scripts before this. Now I'm actually getting into it. I'm finding Lewis scripts are really great for calculations. Way better than throwing in a whole bunch of components like some of my older microcontrollers. If you look at them, they have so many conditional triggers that I'm amazed they even work. Honestly, it would be so much simpler to just program them all in a quick Lewis script instead of having greater thans, less thans, numerical switch boxes. Instead of all of that, I could just use a quick if statement or a quick greater than check or just a just a quick number inversion or math equation and I can do everything that I'm trying to do um, on all of my controllers. So anyway, I'm gonna resave this because I fixed the radio display here. But yeah, this is basically this is it. This is if I take you in here, you're gonna see a lot of similar stuff. I don't think I documented any of this, but you're gonna see a lot of the similar stuff that I had before. And yeah, it draws the text to the screen just like our other one draws the text to the screen. It outputs the frequency and it outputs a boolean to light up a light if it's got a signal. But this is all the same thing here. It's all the same. If we start a counter on tick 5, we get the frequency number, and then we go. If the max frequency is greater, then so we're checking to see if the players put in any input into the keyboard. So if they have, then we'll check for a hold. We'll check for a signal. Or I should say we'll get the hold to see if the hold actually is triggered. We'll get the signal from the tower. We'll get the minimum frequency from the keyboard, and then if we have a signal, we're gonna pause. Simple as that. If we have a signal, we're going to pause. We're going to change lock on to true. The same down here. If we have no signal, we're going to set false. We're going to set the lock on to false. So down here, if we have pause or hold on, we don't do anything with the frequency. The frequency equals the frequency, and it stays. It doesn't change. If we're not pausing and we're not holding, then we're going into stage 4, which is add 1 to the frequency, check to see if we're outside the limits that the player has set, and if we are outside the limits, correct it. So if we're too low, if our frequency number is too low, we go to the minimum. If the frequency has hit the max, then we again reset to the minimum, and then we end. And then at the end, we just reset the count to 0, so we can start our loop back over again. That's it. Very, very simple. Very, very straightforward. And like I said, all this does is checks for a signal. If it finds a signal, it pauses. That's all it does. That's it. It doesn't calculate direction, doesn't calculate signal strength, nothing. It just says, hey, we got a signal. We're going to pause here and listen in. Pretty straightforward. But this code here was the basis for the code that I wrote for the other one. This is where I learned. This is where I started learning the tricks. That's where I kind of perfected the tricks. And now that I have some knowledge of how to calculate bearings, how to calculate directions, how to calculate that kind of stuff, I can start getting into even more. I can program turrets now, because there's a very simple math equation to calculate the drop angle of a turret, or the drop angle, I should say, the drop angle of a projectile in Stormworks. So if I have the bearing, if I have the distance, if I know the drop angle of the projectile, I can now calculate the elevation. So I can turn the turret, calculate the elevation, so I can raise the turret, and then all you got to do is fire. And you should hit it bang on every single time. So I can translate, what I'm saying is I can translate this code into radar, or laser targeting, or any other kind of targeting, now that I know what I'm doing. So this was very, very useful. And basically it's now helped me learn how to do more. So I think from here on out, I'm going to be writing Lewis scripts instead of calculating things out. Because like I said, if I showed you some of my controllers, they would make your head spin. Let me see if I can find one here that's a lot of these are very, very simple controllers. They don't do a lot of calculations. A lot of them were built just for specific purposes. Oh, so here's a large generator calculator. Look at this sucker. And you're gonna notice in here, not a single frickin' Lewis script. It's all done by switches, counters, greater thans, knots, multiplication here. I got another switch here. I got another knot there. I got a toggle here, which this basically functions as an if statement almost, because I'm going, if this is greater than that, then, so this is your if statement, which I could easily just type into a couple of lines of code and put it in a Lua. that's my if statement. And then I check the greater than, less than. That's one line of code. And then I got a counter. I could set a global counter, because there's a counter here, there's a counter here. I could use a global counter to eliminate those. And same, I got the same stuff up here. I got greater than checks, I got less than checks, I got ands, I got all of this can be scripted in Lua. Now the only problem with Lua is it functions on well, actually it's not even really a problem. But it functions on composite. So you have to, with Lua, you have to composite in and composite out. That's the only problem with it. and it's not even really a problem because, like, if you look at my radio scanner, this guy here, it's not even a problem. It's especially the out. The out is easy. The in is a little more complicated, but the out is so simple. You're all you're doing is outputting the signal. Now, if I had to have some out points, then I would have to do the conversions. I'd have to use like composite read to a number. I tell it what channel to use, and then send that out to, you know, whatever target. Um, but that's not hard at all either. So I would have composite write on this side, bringing in my variables. I would have a composite read on this side, sending out my variables, and I would do everything, absolutely everything, inside the Lua script. All the calculations, all the processing, everything would happen in the Lua script. So it'd be like, boom, all the data comes in, whoop, data goes out, done, done. Instead of using like greater thans, less thans, nots, and all that stuff, I just use a few if statements here and there. If this, then that. If not, then that. You know, really simple coding. So yeah, I'm actually tempted to go through some of my older scripts, especially the more complicated ones. Some of them are pretty easy. Like this is just an amphibious motor selector. So all it does is it uses a switch box to say, okay, are we using these or are we using these? And if we're using these, then we're just switching it over. So you have wheel drive, and you have amphibious drive. That's all it is. So that's all it is. So if the amphibious motors are on, it sends a signal here, and then so your WS then gets used, and it gets sent out to the what you call it? Sent out to the drives. Oi. So for the amphibious motors, usually come down to here. Since the amphibious motors are on, then the WS gets sent out to the amphibious motors, which are going to be the motors attached to your propellers and your jets, basically. So that's going to send the power out to your, well, it's WS. It's going to send the power out to your propellers. Whereas on this side, if the amphibious motors are not enabled, what it'll do is it'll take your WS throttle and it'll send it out to the wheel drive. And then the opposite is true. So, for example, if the amphib motors are not engaged, so there's no signal here, it just sends a 0 out to the amphibious drive. So instead of sending your WS, it sends a 0. It doesn't actually turn them off or anything. It just doesn't send them a signal. It doesn't send them any commands. So your propellers you're not going to go forward or reverse. Same with the wheel drive. It's going to send a 0 out to your wheel drive. So it's not going to drive forward. It's not going to drive backward. When you tell it to go forward or backward, it's not going to do it. It's just going to sit there as a 0, as if you're not even touching the controls. So that's basically just how the amphib works. But that was a bad demonstration. Something a little more complicated. Like even this isn't really a good demonstration because it's just clamping. this clamps, and it's the same thing: winch down, winch up, depending on what your input is. So it's kind of, some of these are small enough that I don't need to redo them, but there are some pretty big ones. Like I have a compact greater than. I don't need to Lua that. GPS dial indicator, I don't know. Yeah, that actually might be Lua. I could probably Lua this really easy. Yeah, I could Lua this really easy. So what this guy does is this takes the ship position and a target position, a known target position, because I'm using this on my crab pots. My crab pots have built-in GPS. So what I can do is, using the boat's GPS, I can tune into the CrabPot's GPS because all my CrabPots have different frequencies. So I can tune into the CrabPot GPS, and then using a couple of functions here, you can see I got a lens function here. Down here I got a Atan2 function. Using these two functions, which is basically what I did in the radio thing, I get my distance and I get my direction output to a dial. This function here basically changes the output here to something that a dial could display. So then I have it going out to a dial, and the dial is set -1 to +1, so it'll sway. But it also takes into account the fact that dials do not point down. Well, I mean, they do point down, but when your dial is set to -1 and +1, 1 is like, the -1 is going to be like here, like this angle. +1 is going to be like this angle here. So it calculates that part of your directional dial. Because like I said, if you look at a dial, you got one here, pop her down there, then we'll zoom in and you can see. So there you go. So I can't get a pointer, but anyways, fact of the matter is the 1 is going to be this part here. That right there is going to be 1. That right there, or that right there will be -1. That right there will be +1. So what it does is it calculates this angle. If the buoy is back here, it's not going to show. It's just going to stop right here. So it's going to point this way or point that way depending on which side of this is. So if the buoy is like here, it's going to bury the needle on this edge. If the buoy's over here, it's going to bury the needle on this edge. If the buoy's out in front, it's going to give you an accurate direction of where to go. So that's all that calculates out. But my point being, I could take this and put it in a Lewis script, and it will be so much cleaner because I'll have my 4 inputs, and then I'll have my composite read into the Lewis script. I'll have my composite write, I should say, going into the Lewis script. I'll have my composite read coming out, and then all I'll have is 2 outputs. I'll have the distance output and the output to the dial. So instead of having all this mess, all this visual mess with all these lines going everywhere, I'll literally have these 4, a composite in box, a Lewis script, composite out box, and then these 2 outs. So I take all of this math calculating, all of this stuff, and I just toss it into the Lewis script. I have compass input here too, so that'll be another input. But basically, I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inputs that go down to one little line that'll go into the Lewis script. Lewis script to calculate everything. One little line will come out of the Lewis script. I shouldn't say one little line because I'll need 2 lines. I'll need 2 lines out of the Lewis script. One for that, one for that. But, like I said, I can do all the processing in the script instead of doing it, with lines crisscrossing each other, making it hard to tell what's connected to what. So I think that's what I'm gonna do with a few things. I'm gonna find some of my more complicated scripts. Like stuff like this is stupid simple. I'm not gonna put this in a Lewis script because all it is a switch box with a timer on it. So, that kind of stuff I don't need to script. But then I have things like, yeah, that's not it either. Then I'll have things like I have a train controller here somewhere that is very complicated. 2-lever bolt controller. What's this all about? Oh, no, I don't want to save. I'm not going to save. Load. I lost it now. Dang. So I have a fish finder converter. You can see that does input from the fish finder, I could run this input from the fish finder directly into a Lua script, and I could do all this stuff in the Lua script, fire it out. You know, I could take the distance, the direction, um, fish detected, depth of fish. I could put all that in a Lua script and output it to a screen instead of outputting it to, different numbers. I could just send it straight to a screen. That would be the that would be the benefit of doing it in a Lua script. Lua outputs screens, or Lua does screen output. So instead of doing this and saying, oh, a fish is this far away, in this direction. Instead of doing that, I can actually put the damn dot right on the map. Boink, there it is. There's where the fish is. A lot of benefits. So that's basically it. I'm gonna get out of here because it's now getting early. It's so late. It's early. This video is way longer than I wanted it to be. I only wanted it to be 30 minutes, and we are an hour past that. So I'm gonna end here, and I'm gonna get my ass back to bed. So take care, everybody. This is Jody and signing off. I'll see you next time. Bye bye now.